She thought she'd buried this moment forever. The hallway smelled like antiseptic and cold coffee. Marcus Hale, worth more than most countries, stood frozen in room 114's doorway. Not the machines, not the quiet, the bassinet. Two small faces sleeping, completely unaware they were rewriting a man's entire world. Nobody had known. Not a single person. Across the room, Elena looked up. No reaching. No flinching. Just watching him absorb what her silence had protected for 14 months. She had her reasons. And when you hear them, you'll understand every single one. Where are you watching from? Drop it below. The morning Elena signed the divorce papers, it was raining. Not dramatically. Not the kind of rain that shows up in movies to match a broken heart. Just a flat, gray Tuesday drizzle that made the parking lot smell like wet concrete and old leaves. After leaving the lawyer's office, she sat in her car for 11 minutes. Didn't cry. Just watched a woman across the street struggle with an inside-out umbrella and thought, that's exactly what this feels like. Losing a battle nobody else could even see. Marcus Hale had entered Elena's life when she was 29. Magnetic wasn't even the right word for him. He was just present in a room in a way that made everyone else feel slightly less real. That first night, she remembered thinking he looked like a man who always knew where he was going. Turned out that was only half true. He knew where he was going. Asking where she wanted to go never crossed his mind. Their first 2 years were genuinely good. Weekend drives with no destination. Cooking dinner badly and laughing about it. The kind of ordinary joy that doesn't photograph well, but settles into your bones anyway. During those years, Elena believed that being chosen by someone like Marcus meant something permanent. She was 31 before she understood the difference. Being chosen and being seen, those aren't the same thing. It started small, the way it always does. A dinner she planned alone because he forgot. A decision made about their apartment without asking her opinion. A promotion she earned that he celebrated for exactly one evening before pivoting back to his own quarterly numbers. None of it was malicious. That was the part that made it impossible to name. He wasn't cruel, just absent, present in body, gone in attention. An absence, sustained long enough, hollows a person from the inside out. She tried. This matters, so it needs saying plainly, Elena tried. She brought it up one Sunday morning over coffee, carefully, the way you approach something that might shatter. He listened, nodded, said, I hear you, in the tone of a man who had already moved on to his afternoon schedule inside his head. 3 months later, she tried again, this time in writing, thinking maybe words on paper would land somewhere different. They didn't. On their 4th anniversary, he booked a beautiful restaurant, ordered the wine she liked, reached across the table and held her hand. Sitting there in a dress bought specifically for that night, Elena realized he was performing love rather than practicing it. After that, she stopped talking. Nobody tells you what that kind of silence actually feels like. It isn't peaceful. It isn't acceptance. It's the sound of someone who has run out of ways to explain their disappearing, and everyone around them is too busy to notice. Showing up anyway was simply who she was. His mother's birthday, handled. His assistant's father passed away in October. Elena sent a card before Marcus even knew about it. The invisible infrastructure of their entire life ran through her hands while he built towers with his. Every single day, without recognition, without rest. Some secrets aren't kept out of cruelty. They're kept out of exhaustion. By the time she found out she was pregnant, the decision about the marriage was already made. Papers being drafted. An apartment lease in her name alone. The math was done. Savings, salary, silence. And leaving with dignity felt more honest than leaving with noise. Then the ultrasound technician looked up and said, I'm seeing 2. Elena stared at the ceiling of that small, cold room for a long moment. 2. She thought about Marcus. Picked up her phone, found his name, held it there, thumb hovering, for 37 seconds. She counted because when you're about to make a decision that shapes the next decade of your life, Every second arrived separately. The phone went back into her bag. This is the part people misunderstand. So pay attention. Keeping the twins secret wasn't about punishment. No strategy. No leverage. No elaborate plan. At 33 years old, exhausted in ways that had no name, carrying two lives inside her body, she knew with a steady certainty that telling Marcus would pull her back into an orbit she had finally, barely escaped. Choosing herself wasn't pretty, wasn't perfect. Some nights, she lay awake at 2 a.m. wondering if she'd made the worst mistake of her life. But she chose. Clara arrived first. Leo followed 14 minutes later. Holding one in each arm in that delivery room, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years solid. Like her feet were finally touching ground that actually belonged to her. 14 months of middle-of-the-night feedings, tiny socks, and learning what real exhaustion felt like. 14 months of building something that was entirely, unapologetically hers. And she had no idea a man in a charcoal coat was about to walk through a hospital door and find them. No idea the ground was about to shift beneath her again. That's the thing about ground you build yourself. You start to trust it. You stop looking over your shoulder. You let yourself breathe. And that's exactly when the past walks back in. Not all at once, though. It never works that way. It starts with something small, a coincidence that doesn't feel like one, a name mentioned in the wrong room, a door left open by accident that should have stayed shut. It started with a phone call Marcus never meant to make. His assistant had dialed the wrong contact. 7 months after the divorce was finalized, Marcus was sitting in the back of a car headed to the airport when his phone rang and a voice said, "Marcus? It's Daniel, Elena's neighbor. I think this call was meant for her." Almost he hung up. Almost. "How is she?" The words came out before he decided to say them. Daniel paused. "She's managing. Got her hands pretty full these days." Marcus assumed he meant work. He thanked Daniel, ended the call, and stared out the window at the highway for the rest of the drive. Something about those 4 words sat wrong in his chest. Got her hands pretty full. He told himself it didn't matter. Told himself both of them had moved on. The chapter was closed, and they were better for it. Some lies are easier to believe at 30,000 feet. Meanwhile, Elena's mornings looked nothing like his. 5:30 a.m. Clara crying first. She always did. Leo would follow exactly 4 minutes later, as if calibrated to his sister's distress. Moving through the small apartment in gray, pre-dawn dark, one baby on her hip, bottle warming on the stove, coffee sitting forgotten on the counter. This was her life now. Not glamorous. Not the kind of existence that gets celebrated at dinner parties. But completely, stubbornly, entirely hers. Somewhere between the 2 a.m. feedings and the mountains of tiny laundry, she had stopped grieving the life she'd left behind. Turns out you can't miss a house that was never really a home. Good people surrounded her. That mattered more than she'd expected. Her neighbor Ruthie, 64, retired, absolutely nobody's fool, had appointed herself unofficial grandmother the week Elena brought the twins home. Showed up that first morning with a casserole, a baby carrier, and zero tolerance for polite refusals. "You're going to let me help you," Ruthie said, setting the casserole on the counter with the authority of a woman who had raised 4 children and outlasted 2 husbands. "That's not a question." Elena laughed for the first time in weeks. Real laughter. The kind that surprised her. Small moments like that kept her moving. Not grand revelations. Not sudden clarity. Just Ruthie's casseroles. And Clara's first real smile at 9 weeks. And Leo's habit of grabbing Elena's finger in his sleep like he was making sure she was still there. She was still there. That was enough. If this story is hitting something real for you, subscribe. Every week there's a new story about women who chose themselves and the lives that followed. 7 months post-divorce. Marcus was not okay. Functional, yes, but that's a different thing entirely. The kind of not okay that wears a good suit and returns emails promptly and gets described by colleagues as focused. His company had grown. 2 new acquisitions. A business magazine profile called him relentless, which he accepted as a compliment because he didn't know what else to do with it. Relentless. As if moving fast enough meant you weren't running from something. His mother saw it. Vivian Hale, sharp, patient, the kind of woman who watched more than she spoke, said it to him plainly over Sunday dinner in November. "You look like a man who lost something and convinced himself he put it down on purpose." Marcus changed the subject. Vivian let him. She always let him think he was winning those conversations. The second coincidence came in December. Visiting a colleague recovering from surgery, Marcus stood in a hospital lobby with coffee in hand, watching a woman across the room manage a double stroller with the practiced efficiency of someone who had learned to do hard things one-handed. He couldn't see her face, but something about the way she stood, straight back, tired but unbowed, made him stop mid-sip. The woman turned. It wasn't Elena, but for 3 full seconds, his heart had done something it hadn't done in 7 months. Moved. Not the performative version. Actually moved. He threw the cup away and walked to the elevator without looking back. Stood inside it alone, pressed the 3rd floor, and thought about nothing and everything at the same time. People who mattered don't stop matching on a schedule. You just get to decide what you do with that. Marcus didn't call Elena that night. Didn't search her name. Went home instead, poured a drink he didn't finish, and sat in the living room realizing, for the first time since the papers were signed, that quiet felt different now. It felt like absence. Her absence. 3 weeks later, his phone rang again. A missed dial from a doctor's office, looking for an Elena Hale. Old shared insurance number used by mistake. Marcus sat very still. Elena Hale. She hadn't changed her name. A detail that doesn't fit lodges itself behind your ribs and waits. Patient. Quiet. Waiting for the moment you finally stop moving fast enough to ignore it. He told himself it meant nothing. People forgot to update insurance records. Administrative oversight. He dealt in facts, in numbers, in things that could be measured and filed away cleanly. This didn't file away cleanly. January came. Then February. The kind of winter that settles into a city like it owns the place. Gray skies, bare trees. Everyone hunched against something invisible. Marcus worked 14-hour days that ended with him alone on the 42nd floor. City lights spread out below him like a map of everything he'd built and nobody to show it to. Vivian called every Sunday. He answered every time. They talked about business and weather and his sister's new house in Portland. And it was fine, perfectly, hollowly fine. The call that changed everything came on a Thursday morning in March. Not a misdial, not an accident. This one was deliberate, though Marcus wouldn't understand that until much later. It was Ruthie. "My name is Ruth Calloway," she said, in the voice of a woman who had rehearsed this exactly once and intended to say it only once. "I live next door to Elena. I need you to come to St. Catherine's Medical Center, room 114. Today." Marcus stood up from his desk. "Is she hurt?" "She's fine," Ruthie said. "But there's something you should have known a long time ago. And I'm too old to keep watching someone carry what shouldn't be carried alone." A pause stretched across the line. "Come," she said. "Just come." He drove himself, which he almost never did anymore, because sitting in the back of a car felt wrong for something he couldn't yet name. The whole drive he told himself he was going out of basic human decency. His mind built and dismantled 12 different explanations before he pulled into the hospital parking structure. None of them were right. Room 114 sat at the end of a quiet corridor on the 2nd floor. The same antiseptic and cold coffee hallway where this story began. Because that's how life actually works. The ending and the beginning share the same air. You just don't know it when you're standing in the middle. Through the small rectangular window, Marcus could see Elena, sitting up in the bed, hair pulled back, wearing the expression she always wore when she was holding herself together by choice rather than by ease. Composed, deliberate, present. He pushed the door open. She looked up. Neither of them spoke for 3 full seconds, the kind of silence you could almost hold in your hands. Then Marcus saw the bassinet. Then he saw what was inside it. Two faces. Small, impossibly small. One sleeping with a fist pressed against a cheek. The other open-eyed, staring at the ceiling with the solemn concentration of someone trying to solve a problem they don't have words for yet. The mind that ran quarterly projections, negotiated nine-figure deals, and stayed composed in rooms full of people paid to intimidate him, went completely, utterly blank. Marcus. Elena said his name the way you say something you've rehearsed in the dark. Not cold, not warm, steady. The voice of a woman who had lived through every version of this moment inside her own head and had decided, finally, to let the real one happen. He turned to look at her. "Sit down," she said. "Please." He sat. No apology came. "This matters. Remember it." She did not open with "I'm sorry," or "I know this is a shock," or any softening language people use when they're trying to make hard truths easier to swallow. Elena had spent 14 months deciding what she owed this moment. An apology wasn't on the list. What she owed was the truth, plain, direct, without performance. "Their names are Clara and Leo," she said. "Clara is 14 months old. Leo is 14 months old. They are yours. And I need you to hear everything I'm about to tell you before you say a single word." Marcus nodded. He didn't trust his voice yet anyway. She talked for 20 minutes. About the marriage. About the silence. About standing in that ultrasound room, holding a phone with his name on the screen. About the 37 seconds. About choosing herself. Not because she hated him, but because loving him had cost so much of herself that she hadn't been sure there was anything left to give two new lives. She told him everything. Her voice never broke. Her hands stayed still in her lap. She looked at him the entire time, not defiantly, not apologetically, just directly. The way a person looks at someone when they have finally, completely run out of reasons to look away. When she finished, the room was very quiet. Clara made a small sound in the bassinet. Leo's fist opened and closed against the blanket. Marcus looked at his children, for a long moment. Then he looked at Elena. "I didn't see you," he said. Voice low. Not a question, not an excuse. Just a man arriving, very late, at a truth that had been waiting for him all along. Elena held his gaze. "No," she said simply. "You didn't." That was the moment. Not the revelation of the twins. Not the drive over. Not Ruthie's phone call, or the missed dials, or the December lobby. This was it. Two people, one truth, finally in the same room with nowhere left to hide from it. "Stay with me. We're almost there." Those two words landed in that hospital room like something that had been falling for 4 years and finally hit the ground. Marcus sat with them. Didn't deflect. Didn't reach for an explanation or careful corporate language. Just sat in a plastic chair beside his ex-wife's hospital bed and let the truth be exactly as heavy as it was. That was new. He asked to hold them. Elena watched his face as he lifted Clara first. Carefully, the way people hold things they're terrified of dropping. Clara grabbed his finger immediately. Babies don't know about divorce papers or silence or 37 seconds of a thumb hovering over a phone screen. They just reach for what's nearest and hold on. Marcus looked down at her like a man seeing something for the first time that had always existed. Leo was calmer about the whole thing. He regarded his father with the same solemn, evaluating expression he gave everything. The ceiling, the window, strangers who leaned over his bassinet uninvited. Took his time deciding, then settled against Marcus's arm like he'd concluded this was acceptable. From the bed, Elena watched all of it. Said nothing. Ruthie appeared in the doorway 20 minutes later, took one look at the room, nodded once with the satisfaction of a woman whose instincts had never failed her, and disappeared again without a word. That was Ruthie. The conversation that followed wasn't clean. Real ones never are. Marcus asked questions. Some were right. What do they need? Are you okay? What can I do? Some were wrong. Why didn't you trust me? Didn't you think I deserved to know? Elena answered the right questions fully. The wrong one she met with a look that said she understood why he was asking, and also that she wasn't going to spend this moment defending a decision she had already made peace with. She had done her grieving, her accounting, her reckoning. This wasn't the moment for his. That would come later, in his own time, in his own quiet. What Marcus wanted, and he said this plainly, which took more courage than most of the boardrooms he'd ever walked into, was a second chance. Not just with the twins. He was clear-eyed enough to say it straight rather than hide it behind, "I want to be a father," when what he also meant was, "I want her back." Elena listened to the whole thing. Didn't interrupt. Didn't soften. Didn't let the old pull of him, still there, she wasn't going to pretend otherwise, make the decision for her. When he finished, she looked out the window for a moment. The city outside was doing what cities do. Moving, indifferent, full of its own noise. Cities don't wait for you to be ready. You either move with them, or you get left behind. For years, she had waited for Marcus to move with her. "I don't know," she said finally. Not no, not yes. Not the clean ending either of them might have written for a different kind of story. Just, "I don't know." 3 words more honest than anything she'd said in the last year of their marriage. Marcus nodded. "That's fair," he said. It was because a man who had spent 4 years not asking where she wanted to go had no right to expect an immediate answer now. Here's what Elena knew, sitting in that room. She knew she loved her children in a way that made everything before them feel like practice. She knew Ruthie would have opinions about whatever happened next, and would voice every single one of them. She knew Claire grabbed fingers and Leo took his time, and both of them deserved a father who actually showed up. Not a performance of showing up, not scheduled showing up, but the real, daily, unglamorous version of it. And she knew something harder, that she had rebuilt herself in the 14 months since she left, slowly, piece by piece, in that small apartment with the cold coffee and the mountain of tiny laundry. She had found out what she was made of when nobody was watching. Whatever came next, Marcus or no Marcus, together or separate or something in between, she was not going to hand that rebuilt version of herself over to anyone without being absolutely certain they could see her. Not choose her. See her. She told him that. Not as a warning or an ultimatum, just as a fact, the way she'd told him everything else that afternoon. "If you want to be in their lives," she said, "show up. Consistently. Not grandly. Not with gestures. Just show up when it's boring and when it's inconvenient and when there's nothing in it for you. Do that long enough and we'll talk about the rest." Marcus looked at her. "And if I do?" Elena almost smiled. "Almost. Then maybe you'll finally learn how to see someone," she said. "And we can figure out what that's worth." She didn't watch him leave. Clara was awake now, working on something complicated with her fist. Leo had fallen asleep against the bassinet cushion with his chin tucked down, the picture of someone completely at peace with the world. Elena exhaled, long and slow and all the way out. The ground held. Not perfectly, not without cracks, but it held because she had built it herself, one ordinary day at a time, and she knew every inch of it. Whatever came next, she would meet it standing, on her own terms, in her own time, completely, quietly, entirely herself. One thing left unsaid from the beginning. Elena never needed Marcus to come back. She just needed to know she wouldn't fall apart if he did. That's the whole lesson. If that hit something real, the next video is waiting for you.